Alright, I've made a video like this before, but I'm going to make a better one now because white gold, this is a white gold billet, ingot rather, and we're going to be forging that out, and for this video we're going to be annealing it, and I'm going to show you the proper way to anneal white gold. We're going to be annealing it to get it to dead soft, as soft as we can to make it as easy to forge as possible. White gold is especially in 14 karat. The metals, the filler alloy that turns it white normally can contain nickel. Mine does not. I use palladium. It makes it a little more expensive, well, a lot more expensive, but it produces a better result. It also drops the risk of having somebody have a bad reaction to the nickel components of the alloy. But either way, it contains magnesium, it contains a few other things, and it's a tough, tough alloy to work. It's not brittle, but it does crack and chip. I can't explain why. It almost seems to me that all the gold is really doing is stealing the borrowing color aspects from the other metals. At that point, normally when you mix gold and you make a 14 karat or an 18 karat alloy, you get a very nice homogeneous blend and it works like a single element at that point. 14 karat white gold does not do that. 14 karat white gold almost behaves internally the way it feels, the way it looks when you're working it, when you're trying to forge it out, as if the other metals are not cooperating, and that all the separate molecules, which are now contained inside this one grid and are being overrun by the gold. This is why they called gold. And precious metals also have the term noble metals, and I would compare it like this. There's a Japanese alloy, Shakudo. It contains 4% pure gold and 96% pure copper. I can't explain the effect that the gold has over the rest of the mass of the material, but it controls it. This 4% of one metal controls what the other 96% does. So think about a noble controlling all the base, once again, base metals. You have the base masses and you have the noble masses, and you have the noble metals and you have the base metals. The noble metals control. So in this particular situation, a 4% gold to 96% copper mixture actually is more agreeable than 14 karat white gold. It's easy to work. It doesn't chip. It doesn't crack. As you're running this through the mill, you'll see these little separation lines. If you're not careful, if you squeeze it too much, I can't explain what they are. It just the best way to put it. It looks like the other metals in the alloy are trying to get away from each other and the gold. That's all there is to it. So this is a tricky metal to forge. It's a very, very tricky metal to work. The, Annealing it is properly is paramount. Now, if you just get any precious metal to a glowing red and then even let it air cool, you'll soften it up and you'll be able to work it. However, if you want it as soft as possible, you have to really, really manipulate the molecules. The crystalline structure of metal lines up properly under certain conditions. Heat are those conditions, and the longer and more properly heat is applied, the more orderly these molecules will become. This gives you the most interior room to be working around. That's how metal becomes soft. You picture a deck of cards thrown into a shoebox, and they're all over the place, and you cannot see the bottom of the box. However, if you take those cards and you make a nice, neat little pile, now you can see the bottom of the box. You have that room. That is the room you're creating when you anneal. You create gaps, essentially, from what I've been told. You create an orderly line of molecules, and the gaps between them are where you're able to move and how you're able. Otherwise, they overlap each other, and they're just strewn about the metal. This is when it's in a hard state, and that's when cracking and breaking begins. So, the striker, I've already painted it with flux, so we've gotten that out of the way. We want a nice bushy annealing flame. So, the goal here is even heating. So, we're not going to go back and forth. If we go back and forth, the center will get hotter than the ends because the flame will be concentrated on the center of the material longer. So, we're going to go in arcs, circles rather, but we're going to go over and around. That way, Everything gets heated evenly. Whether we do it right or wrong, it'll all get heated up at the right temperature, at the same temperature, at the same time. And the reason I have it a little darkened up is because I really am dependent upon color in this. You need it to get a little darker than that, a little brighter than that rather, glowing in a cherry red. But the trick with white gold is even. I mean, with all metal, but it's tantamount here. You have to be even. So that's the color we wanted at. From here, we have to keep it at that color without letting it fluctuate, without any variations. So we're going to bring the torch back and just let the outside of the flame hit it. We're just going to keep it encompassed and at that temperature for 30 seconds. After we keep it at that temperature for 30 seconds, we are going to quench immediately. We're going to freeze those molecules in place. And the metal will be a soft. Once again, white metal never really becomes soft. It just gets workable. Even in a fully softened annealed state, really tough metal. All right, freeze, quench immediately. All right. We have obviously we're gonna have to pickle that, but now that metal is really brought to a softened state, and we're gonna continue to mill it up. All right, so like when I got started, it was measuring 17.9 millimeters by 4.8 millimeters by 6.5 millimeters. Right now we have it out to 22.7 millimeters by 3.5 millimeters by 6.6 millimeters. Even though we're not going for width, I'm keeping an eye on the width because if it starts to get too wide, that means I'm applying too much pressure. I want it to go lengthwise. It will go lengthwise unless I apply so much pressure that the material needs to move and it can't go in that direction. In which case it will start to move left and right and in every other direction. So we're going to minimize that. Right now, next anneal. Next anneal session, 32 millimeters by 2.3 millimeters by 6.9 millimeters. I'm going to keep going, but this will be the final segment for this video. And as you can see, now we have it all the way up to 57. This is right. The last one was 32 millimeters. It starts to grow exponentially. Right now we have it to 57 millimeters by 1.2 millimeters by 7 millimeters wide. We're going to start tapering the sides now and make it a little thicker again and run it back and repeat the process. I think I want this to be 26 gauge, so I think I'm going to go to about 130 millimeters, but last anneal session. All right, and that completes my little demonstration on how to anneal and work white gold.